Good morning and welcome back to Plannercraft. Hopefully you can hear me today. So I did do a quick check beforehand. So I'll just wait for a few people to join. So first of all, hi to Thea. So this stream is going to be about working larger than our cutting mat. So even if you've got the 12 by 24, there's going to be times when you're going to want to work even bigger than that. So I thought it might be a good point to show you a few different ways of doing that. So you'll see, first of all, I'm in Illustrator, but what I do in here, you can do it in Affinity, you could do it in Inkscape. It's nothing particularly specialist to Illustrator. And I'm going to very quickly show you the manual way of doing this before we move across to Canvas and show you the tiling function, which is a lot easier. You'll be glad to know. So, hi Mare. Don't be afraid to say hi and let me know that you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, unfortunately I can't see your comments at the moment, but I will try and get to answer them later. So, hi Tracy. So I'm starting off with a pretty simple design, and that's one of the things I would say about if you're going to use the manual method. Try and keep it as simple as possible. And as this is going to be a geometric design, we can show you a bit of an easier way rather than having to worry about lots of duplicates and cropping. So you can see I've set up a grid already in terms of the vertical guides. So now I'm going to show you how I did that so that you can see all the horizontal guides going in. And hi Louise. Are you having some problems with your stream? If you are, let me know. You can always hop onto YouTube or Twitch if you do have any issues, and just find Plannercraft on YouTube, or it's under my name on Twitch. And hi Deb. So here's our vertical guides, and next to show you how to put the horizontal guides in so that you can see how I did that. So I'm just going to drag in a guide, and I'm just going to drop it. Make sure it's dark blue so it's selected, and then we can actually program in the height. Now with our grid, we want to make sure that our areas of our grid are smaller than the active area of our mat. So if you know that you, for instance, have an active area that is 11.73 by 11.65, to quote the ScanNCut one, then that is what you would use, but maybe take it back to a decimal point. So our vertical guides are currently spaced 11.7, and I'm going to do our horizontal guides to 11.6. so that I know that it fits within that active area. So to do that, I'm just going to literally type in 11.6 and hit enter, and that's going to move that guide. Now in Affinity you have the Guides Manager, and you can do the same thing in there. I'm going to bring in another guide. Now let's say you don't really want to be bothered sitting there with a calculator and trying to work out what each multiplication is. It's very easy. Just click and drag over the top of the numbers. Put 11.6 because that's what our first guide is. Use an asterisk, so top right hand corner of your number pad. And then put 2 and hit enter. And it's going to do the sum for you. So always make the computer do the hard work so you don't have to. So next guide. And again 11.6 times 3, and one more for good measure, 11.6 times 4. So we now have a working grid where we can see that our shape is divided up. Now if at this point you can see that it's a little bit over here, and you just think it'd be good if we just move that over so it's a bit more central, then we can move our shape accordingly. So let's move it up, and I'm going to move it across so that our anchor finishes on that guide there, and then it's nice and evenly spaced through the guides. Now in Illustrator you have the ability to actually make a shape a guide. So you can just right click on it and make guide. In Affinity you can lock it, and that way you still have that shape there for snapping to. But I thought it would be easier for you to see exactly what I'm doing in Illustrator when you have the guide set up like this. So then what you would do is you would get your pen tool, and we're just going to literally click on each point. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up building your shapes ready to cut. Okay, I'm going to start over here. So there's the start of your shapes. But it's very easy to think when it's like this, okay, I'll go to File, Export and SVG. What you actually need to do is have a separate document for each one of these shapes. So this is why I think the vinyl blade is worth its weight in gold. Even if you never tile vinyl, the vinyl blade is going to make it possible to tile other things such as fabric, paper if you're doing like a scrapbook layout where you need to go definitely edge to edge on a 12 by 12, which you can't do currently. So anything like that, you are going to get the money's worth out of your vinyl blade. And that's before you even think about cutting things like paper with it. And yeah, so much it can do. It's the one thing I really do think is worthwhile getting. Morning Linda, morning Gail, if I haven't said morning already. So what you would then do is start a new document, use your one with your setting for your active area, and then copy your shape and paste it in like so. You can then apply a weeding box in all the usual way, and then go to File and Save As in Illustrator or Export in Affinity. It's also Save As in Inkscape as well. Now, I do have Inkscape open. If you are looking to do the same thing in Inkscape, it's worth checking out extensions, as usually you will find that there is some way that has been automated for you to do that. So your extensions are in here, and it comes with a certain amount that are already set up. But you'll notice there's one here called ScanNCut, which probably isn't in your Inkscape. And that's actually an extension that you can actually download and install. Now I'm going to get Ian to do a video on installing that because it's a little bit trickier. Yep, the Cricut has a vinyl setting. Yeah, it's slightly different. So while you can cut vinyl with a standard blade in the ScanNCut, the vinyl blade is very much for detail. So it's more of a needle point almost, by comparison to the blunt instrument that the standard blade can be sometimes. And hi Zena. And hi Beatrice, if I hadn't said hi. So Inkscape, don't rule it out of hand. There's quite often an extension that will help you on the way. Finally, we have canvas with the vinyl blade. So when the vinyl blade's been properly activated, you're going to see that you have this little button appear in canvas here, and that's where your vinyl designs live. Okay. But most of the time you'll ignore that panel, although there are some very pretty designs that come with it. And they're very big, some of them. You can go nice and big. So if you've got some temporary adhesive vinyl for your walls, you can have a lot of fun with some Christmas decorations. So when we have that activated, if we go to Artboard, you'll notice we have an additional option. So we have 12 by 12, which is kind of obvious, 12 by 24, which is your larger mat, and when you know you need to go beyond that, we have custom size for tiling. I'm glad that's not breakable. Okay. So, with your tiling, you'll see that you have an option to have as big a mat as you want. Now, first of all, don't panic at this point, because you don't have to get that size perfect straight off the bat. Okay. So it's giving me measurement in inches, and I'm currently in millimetres. So I'm going to change my unit to inches, and I can see that my custom size for tiling is definitely not big enough. So it's giving me a measurement of 90 wide and 50 for the drop. Okay, come on. It does want to do 90. Okay. I'll divide it in half then, see. Yeah, that'll do. So I'm going to use 2 of those. So next, I'm thinking about my design, and I'm going to want to use both elements of this as a whole, because I want to put a certain amount of detail for a bit of a funky design. So let's first of all tell you what I'm going to do. I'm starting with a clock as the basis for a piece of wall art. So a good place to start is just by mapping roughly out where I want that to appear. So I was thinking something would be quite cool, like using an eye for the centre of the clock, and then we're going to do some nice flowing hair that's going to reach out across the wall. Yeah, this is quite a big piece that I'm thinking, so I'm not probably going to finish it all today, but I want to at least get the structure in there so you can start to see what I mean. So I'm going to go to my basic shapes, and let's pull it in. Let's just pull in a rounded square. So that's going to kind of indicate where my clock's going to go. Now my telly is going to be just down here. So I want to try and get that sort of central as much as possible. So I'm going to put that over here. And in my layers palette, I can even say clock centre, so I know what that shape is. I can then start to plan out, okay, well, if that's there, then obviously you're going to have 12 o'clock like so. I'm going to press and hold Alt so I can drag a copy. That's going to be my 9 o'clock. And then press and hold Alt again for 6 o'clock. And you'll notice I'm not really worried about this distance, it's just the angle. So I want to be kind of really playful with the layout of my clock, because these pieces are all separate, that I don't necessarily have to think, oh, it's got to be in a perfect circle. No, not bothering with that. So let's say that one's going to be sort of more there, and that one's going to be more there. And we might tuck that one in there, and that one out there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to draw a path so that I can kind of check my angle, so to speak. So I'm going to go from the centre of this point, centre there, back out to roughly the centre there, and click again. So that's going to give us a nice open path. We can go back to that tool again, so centre, back to centre there, and click again. So that's another open path. Now this is where we're going to start checking our positioning. So we want to try and be as accurate as possible. So I'm going to pop that into the centre there where we currently have them, and click again. And so here to here to here, and click again. So we want to focus on these angles here, and I think this bit here is just a bit too narrow and that bit looks a bit too fat. So if we click twice so we can get to our nodes, I can actually move that node so it looks a bit more evenly spaced, and that tells me where this little shape needs to move to. Again, round here, and I think that's still quite even. If we look at this one to this one, maybe this arm here just needs to move down just a little. So again, double click so that we get to our nodes. I'm just going to move that slightly that way. And again, it's really useful that Canvas pops that dot in the centre of the shape so that you can line that up to the end of the line. Okay. So we start to have the basis for our clock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group all those shapes and call that a guide, because we're not going to want that to ever show through, but we want to keep it there for our reference as we're creating this design. So group, guides, and we're going to set it to draw. And we can minimise that up and click off it. So at this point you could start to bring in an SVG if you wanted to, if there was a particular design that you had downloaded from somewhere. And you would do that in exactly the same way as normal. So even though the map looks totally different, because it's not a map, it still works with that same functionality. So don't get hung up on where the joins are just yet. And morning, Jennifer. So as I said, I'd like this to kind of come out from an eye, and I'm kind of thinking about how I want my face to appear. Do I want it straight on? Do I want it turned slightly to the side? And I'm thinking that as it's going to kind of span out from this eye piece, that it would be really funky to actually have her turn slightly and maybe go a lot bigger. So while I have this eye kind of mapped out here, the actual eye itself could be more of a kind of looking this way rather than looking straight on, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to just map out roughly the shape that I want my eye to be. And I'm going to start from this edge here, I think. And again, I'm not getting tied down at this point to all the detail. Map it out first, so almost like a sketch. Then you can go back and add all the detail bits after. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because I don't want that clock piece to take up the entire eye. I still want to see some detail so it looks like a pretty eye. Let's just lock those guides as well. There we go. Now if this shape goes off the edge here, don't worry about that just yet, because obviously this is just a sketch. But what you will need to do is just chop that end off before going to the tiling. So there's our eye. I'm going to go back to my pen tool again, so you can just tap P to go back to that. If we click and drag, you're going to get a curve, like so. And this is not going to be the world's prettiest nose straight off the bat. Like I said, everything we do at this point is just a guide. So I want to drag that back, because if she's looking this way, then the nose will be much closer to her eyes. So at this point we're looking not only at the features in proportion to each other, but also where does that clock piece then come? Do we want to move that slightly so that it doesn't sit on the end of her nose? So we can do that. So if we unlock the guides, and I'm just going to click on the shape here, and let's move this down this way. I'm going to click twice on that guide there, and I want to keep that line more or less that same angle. So what I'm actually doing, although I'm moving that point away from the centre, I'm actually focusing on the central point, so up here, and this angle here, to make sure that doesn't change too much. And it may look a bit odd that, you know, you're thinking to yourself, well, surely I should be looking where my mouse is going. No, try and ignore that and focus just there. And that's going to help you to be able to place that object much easier. Now, I'm just going to use my arrow keys to move my shape. So I have shift pressed, and that means that my shape is going to move much further to one key press. And I can then tweak it just using the arrow keys on their own. So we have an eye, we have a nose that is awfully big at the moment. Let's see if we can sort out her nose a bit, shall we? There we go. Don't forget to relock the guide. Okay. Next, we need to put a mouth. So if the eyes are here and the nose is here, the mouth is going to be half that distance again. And again, I'm not going to be hung up on details. So as I said, I'm not going to get this all done today. It'd be nice to think that, but I'm not going to get it all done today. So what I will do before I go is also show you on something that's already made, so you can see the next step. So my thought was that I could have hair that's kind of going to go swooshing over here. So this is obviously where the tricky bit's going to kind of happen, because we've got to match that up on the next piece. So I'm just going to leave that like that, so that that's going to swoosh up and over. And again, take that up. And let's go up over here. I'm also going to take another piece down here that's going to kind of swoosh down and back on itself, like so. So, swoosh. Take that nice and big. So at the moment these are all guides giving you kind of a structure to work to. Now rather than me taking up loads and loads of your time showing you that how you then fresh that out, what I would do is I'm going to jump to showing you a design that is already imported, so that we can actually show you the splitting up and how that works. So I'm just going to save this first. So file, save as, and I will come back and show you how that design is going to develop. And let's go to desktop. I'm going to drop it into a stream folder and call this all up. So if I go new, so I can start a new one. And I'm going to take this a little bit smaller this time. Let's go 24 by 24. Gives us a nice, almost format layout. So let's bring in an SVG. And go to Dropbox. Let's go design bundles and I'm going to go on every pattern file rather than an actual SVG, aren't I? Yep. Don't want a font one. Let's go from Mandala, because they're always good to do big. So there's our Mandala design. And I think I've shown this one on stream before actually. So I did something with it. So I'm going to resize this, holding shift so that we keep it in proportion. I'm going to take it almost all the way to the edge. So bear in mind that our cuttable area is just under the 12 by 12. So if we go to edge on a 24 by 24, you're actually going to end up doing 9 mats instead of 4. Okay. So there's our design, and we know it's going to roughly cut across this middle of each piece here. So if we go to premium and tiling, and this is what you would do when your design is finished. You can see that you're going to have your 4 mats. Now it's got a tiny little bit just over here. Now at the moment there's no room for a weeding box. So if you want to add a weeding box, tick the box and you'll find that your mats are going to change again. And you can suddenly see that because we've ticked the weeding box, you're now going to end up with more mats. So hence I was saying that you need to kind of counteract that active area by coming in a bit. If you're doing this with vinyl, you need to bring it in even more. So at this point, don't think, oh, I've done it wrong, I can't change anything. You can always go cancel, and you can always resize if that's what you would rather do. Check use select tool first. So I'm just going to bring that in a little bit and bring it back to the middle. So again, premium tiling. And again, add weeding box. So you may still find it's a little bit out, but we'll see how we go. And there you go, you're still on your 4 mats. Now we can give it a file name. So let's call this one Mandala Wall Art. You have your tiling size. Now, tiling size is interesting because you have your 12 by 12 and your 12 by 24. But you also have the option for using A4. So if you only have A4 vinyl, you can still use that tiling function. Just make sure you choose A4 in here. Same if you have the slightly larger in width terms, but shorter in height terms letter size. So something like that might be, some of the Arteza vinyl I think comes in letter rather than A4. And likewise A3, if you're going to go for A3 you need to be using the 12x24 matte. And also the same for Ledger. So I'm going to leave that 12x12. Overlap. Now overlap is useful if you are doing something like fabric. So if you've got a dress piece that you want to do and you don't mind it being panelled, which you might not, depends on what the costume is, then you can actually overlap it so that you have a seam allowance to actually join pieces together. Same if you were doing something like a quilted blanket. If you were doing pieces on that, you could actually go bigger, and you can still do things like your seam allowance on your shapes, as long as you do it in canvas before you do this process. Another reason for doing overlap, if you want to do a non-linear join. So what I mean by that is if you want to do something where you conceal the join a bit more by not necessarily doing it in a perfectly straight line, then if you overlap and actually position it onto your work and then cut through the two layers, when you then lay them down they're going to actually nest. And then you also have spacing for your weeding box. So if you want to give yourself a little bit more of a border, so you'll see that you can just see the active area around here, you can actually just kind of expand that a little bit. Excuse me. When you're ready to export, go to export and it's going to tell you that something is not right. So you can see it says some objects are automatically removed, there's too small to cut. Now the chances are you've come across this one before and you can just go okay and off you go. Like so. So if I drop in another folder in here, if it let me, if not, doesn't matter. I'll just go choose that folder then, and it's going to pop an FCM file for each of those mats. So if I go back into that folder, let's do a save as so I can save it in the same place. You can see that you have an FCM for each mat and it's coded. So all the row A's are the first row across the top. You then have all the B's for the next row, and if you are using some really big designs you'll have C, D, E, F and so forth. Likewise you can see that it's then followed by a number. So that O1 means first column, and all the O1s would go downwards in a straight line. All the O2s would go down in the next column, and so on and so forth. So you can see that by doing it this way it makes life so much easier, because you aren't having to do that physical process. You're not having to add a weeding shape to each mat, which would also affect your grid lines that we did. Oh, excuse me. In Illustrator, I really should breathe more. So I'm going to save that. So what you would then do is take those 4 FCM files, and you could save those to USB and take them to your machine, which is typically what I would do. Because obviously you're working with multiple files, it's much easier to do it that way than to then send each one of those files individually using the Wi-Fi. So are there any questions, or have I lost you all? It's all gone very quiet. Okay, So one of the other questions I had on the group, and I thought I might cover a little bit with this design that's in front of me, so just looking at it and thinking that'd be really good to do, is about colouring outline files. So if we go into edit, you can see that our outline file is all one shape. And I'm going to just get rid of the loves because they're going to confuse matters. So there we go. Bye bye. So I'm going to keep one copy of that shape that is as is, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to select both, and I'm going to align them so that I know that they're exactly overlapping. Oh, Zena, I'll try and get you caught up on which ones are really useful. So this one, it kind of builds on when I first had the vinyl blade. I did a very quick project on creating a poker table. So that one's worth going back on and seeing how I did that. But when we're working big, it's always a good idea to map it out, Linda. Always a good idea, because then you can start to see if there's any potential issues. Like with the hair, I realised that I'm going to have to match that up on the next piece, so that not only does it start in the right place, but you can also follow that curve through. So that's going to be an interesting one to show you how to do. So at the moment, with this one, all I've done is I've brought in the SVG and I've resized it. And I've deleted the love because it's too much. And I've duplicated it and overlaid it. So there's one copy that I'm just going to hide away. And that's going to stay being my outline layer. So we can even give it a name. Outline. And it can hide away. And I'm even going to lock it. So it's just safe. Now with our copy, what we can actually do is we can actually start to colour our design. But before we can do that, we need to get access to these inside shapes. So while they are holes at the moment, the data is there for you to have that fill. We just have to be a bit more clever about how we go about getting it. So I'm going to get basic shape, and I'm going to resize it so it's bigger than my design. Now that's important, it has to be bigger than your design. Not by much, but as long as it's bigger. If you're working with multiple mats on a custom design, can you have more than one mat on the screen at a time? In Canvas, no. You can't even have two documents open, which is why it's going to be interesting to show you how you have to do that, because basically you have to copy and paste between documents and then get your measurements. So we'll be talking about having things like reference points and shapes that you can use that are there to help you position. But I'm aware that I want to at least show you how to get to the end point, so hence I showed you that little bit about how we would export it. But I am going to do another little video for those that are interested on how you then flesh out that design, how you match it up and so forth. It is going to be quite an advanced one, I warn you now. So if you're feeling a little bit daunted, go back and watch some of the other ones first so that you kind of caught back up. So now that we've got this shape here, you want to drop it behind your outline. The reason being that we're about to do a divide, so you want to make sure that your detailed shape is on top to punch through that square underneath. You're going to select both, go to edit and divide, which is this one just here. So as you can see, wherever there's an overlap, it's going to punch a line. And it's going to think about it and it's going to do this. At this point, most people would freak and go, ah, what's he done? Nope, that's absolutely fine. Okay. Click off it, and if you go to your layers, you're going to see that there's lots and lots and lots going on. So if I hide our detailed shape, so that was what punched through, you can see that now you have that as a negative space. So we can delete that one. We also don't need this outside shape around the outside edge, so we can delete that one. So at this point you can decide which bits you want to colour in as such. So all these little bits like this, you might decide, well actually that's going to be too much, so we'll take those out. If it's a single leaf, we take it out. So it's good to give yourself some sort of criteria like that, that you go, right, that I'm going to just leave as open. And it would depend on things like your walls even, what colour you're putting it on. Background is everything. Then as we move in towards the centre, you're going to want to look at the background of the shape. So what is background and what is fill? So something like this shape here, where it's really obviously a background piece, we can just delete. And we'll do that for each rotation of that design, because it's easier to do these things as we go, like this. But as we look at that central piece, that could look really nice popped up as a colour. So I'm going to leave that as is. We also need to decide about these little loopy pieces, but we'll decide about that in a minute. Let's concentrate on this flower in the middle. So I'm going to press and hold shift and click each one so that I get every rotation of that design. I'm going to go to my properties paintbrush. I'm going to go to fill and let's give it colour. Now the exact colour isn't important at this stage, so don't worry about getting that exact pink, because the ScanNCut is never going to print it. Okay, and Canvas, unless you have the printing cut, can't print. So you have your first colour selected. And then these hearts would look quite nice in red. So not necessarily the red that you get in Canvas, but it's still good there to have there as a kind of prompt. Okay, that's the red layer. So you might decide, okay, each one of these petals can be pink, and each one of these can be red, and you might go for a third colour for that outside set of petals. Now what I would say is, wherever you use a colour, try to use it in 2 or 3 different places. So let's go to the burgundy, just so that you can see the difference. And with the centres, we might use that same burgundy. Like so. So then when we've done those, we might go, okay, everything else I'm just going to put in green. So what I would do is, rather than selecting each of those leaf shapes individually and then going, right, okay, I'll have it in that green and that green and that green, don't worry about that at this stage. We're going to group our colours that we've already done. So if we press and hold Command on a Mac or Control on a PC, we can select additional items individually without having to select all the ones in the middle. So I'm going to select everything that has that kind of burgundy colour. And then I'm going to group those into one folder so that we can turn those on and off depending on which colour we want to send to our machine. Okay, so going round our selection, we can see that those are all correct. So just press Ctrl and G, and that's going to group them all. We can even give it a name of burgundy if we want to. Oh, Nergandy. Oh dear. Definitely a B, not an. So I'm going to do the same for my reds and my pinks. So you'll see I do a lot of work in my layers palette rather than trying to click on the mat. And that's a good habit to get into, because if you're clicking on your mat you might accidentally click on a wrong shape, and then it's such a pain to then try and get to the right one. Whereas if you do it this way, it makes that a little bit easier. So I'm going to group that. And go red. Now once you get used to doing this, you can actually start to go back into shapes in the inside of apertures like this and actually start to create more detail. So this one's quite intricate to kind of show you that, but on a bolder design you can really go and have some fun. So it's worth practicing this skill. So then everything else should be green. Now if you miss something, don't worry about it, just skip it and you can pop it back into the other group after. And it's a good way of just checking that you haven't missed anything. Now if you were to use shift at this point, you'd actually lose the selection that you made at the top, so you don't really want to use shift. If you've got a really long list like this though, what you can do is if you then group those, and I'm going to call them leaves. So now I can come back for that pink and I can just drop that into the pink group. Nice and easy. So it's just a click and drag, and then we can use our shift and we can do the same for our leaves. Just click and drag and drop. And because we can set colour by group as well as by individual shape, we can also, at this point, go to our paintbrush, make sure that we're clicked on fill, and we can pick a green and colour all those shapes at once. So now, if I turn my outline on, I'm just going to unlock it. We now have a colour design. So even if you then go, right, okay, well, I'm going to lighten up that red because it's a bit hard to see, then you can still go into your properties and go, actually, let's go a bit lighter. So we'll go to a peachy colour. And you can still do all your colour mixes as well if you want to. But I think that's a really pretty design. So first of all, you would do the mat how I did before with just your outline. But then you could also do the same for your pink, for your red, so that you create it in that way. So if I show you how that's going to work. So you can see at the moment that's going to cut through that flower. But one of the other ways that you might want to do it is you might want to actually move that over just so that it misses that join. So hence I would always lock your outline so that you have that reference point to move it back to. But for something like this, where you've got this little tiny bit here, I would just move that shape up because you've got plenty of room here to do so without instructing these, and same with this pink here, just move it down. So next layer, I'll go to the red and back to the tiling and do the same again. And again, you can see there that you've got a certain amount that is going to be okay. This one here, just on this mat here, you can see is just a little bit close because there's also a little tiny bit up on this one. So again, just tweak that one just up slightly and off that join. And I'll turn off the red, put on the burgundy, and tiling in. So that one is spot on. That's the sort of thing you want to see. You want to see that it's clear of this join, or if it's overlapped, make sure it's overlapped with intent. So don't have little tiny bits that are overlapping. And finally the leaves. Okay, so again you can see that you've got a little bit just there. You would just want to fix that so that this leaf section here either moves up or moves down depending. So I might just actually put that one together because that would be quite cool. Might do that as a picture frame. So, any questions? If the video's gone blurry, just give it a refresh. It's usually just that the frame rate's dropped a bit. Okay. Anything's dinking at me. So any questions? Who would like me to do a bit more on the outline technique and colouring in? It does look cool. It's a fab design to play with. I was trying to think what project I used it on, but I know that we did it because we took the love off before, and I'm sure it was on one of the really early videos back last year. Okay, so what I will do then is tomorrow night I will do a bit of colouring in with the design so that you can see how that works practically. So I may even do it in vinyl, you never know. So tomorrow night we are going live at 7 PM and Ian's going to be here helping, so hence I'm like, well, we can do something a little bit more complicated then because Ian's here. One thing I must mention before I go. You want more now? Right, Deb, if you haven't done vinyl yet, you have got to try vinyl. It is so addictive. So addictive. You'll be telling the dogs not to stay still as I get vinyled. But there's lots that we can do. So I was looking at some really funky frames that they've got in IKEA that aren't overly expensive that I thought would be great to do with some stained glass effects, because you can get some nice translucent vinyls particularly glitter ones, and then you've also got some plainer. Sorry, Deb. We do tend to try and, if we do introduce you to new things, we try and introduce them in a more affordable way than other channels. So I'm not going to tell you to get the world's best vinyl and start from there, because there's no point. When you're learning, you're better off kind of going budget and making mistakes and not worrying about it, because you're never going to get it perfect first time. You've all seen me do vinyl though, haven't you? I'm just thinking, I know it's been a while, but I'm sure most people see me do vinyl on stream. But if not, Ian will definitely want me to do vinyl tomorrow because he loves doing vinyl. Yep, Wilco's do vinyl. They do it on the roll. Yes, lots of vinyl virgins. Is that a challenge, Mare? You don't think I can get you hooked on doing vinyl? I was going to say, Zena, I'm sure that people saw the original that I did last year. So it's about time we did a more complicated one with colour inlays and things. I've got to do a... Is that supposed to be a wonky box? A wonky box in vinyl? Maybe? You're going to have to help me out there, Sally. Right, let's do vinyl tomorrow night then, because Ian will be like, yeah, you get to do vinyl. So with that in mind, I'm going to save that for now and do a save as, and I'm going to call this one vinyl art, just so that I've got a separate copy, and then I can always resize that for tomorrow, and I'll find out something that I can stick it onto. Lonky box. Oh, come on, you got to fill this in now, Sally. You know, my gaming limit at the moment is either my games, which is like Sims and, you know, Tomb Raider and Prince of Persia, that, you know, my generations of games. Or I get Jamie's, which is, you know, Minecraft and... what's the other one? My brain's gone blank. Fortnite, there we go. And he's playing another one at the moment, and I can't think what it's called for the life of me. Anyway, while I'm here, I just wanted to say there are a couple of competitions going on at the moment. So in our group, you have a pretty box competition. So you can download a box file from Template Maker or Dreaming Tree or Birds Crafts. Just wanted a third one there. And use one of their designs and decorate it. But the decoration has to be your decoration, so it can't be what's already in the file. Or you can create your box from scratch if you're feeling really brave. Among Us, thank you, Tracy. How on earth do you know that and I can't remember it? Okay. So that's the challenge for our group. So by the end of the month, pretty box, stick it in the album that is up on the group. And I'm pretty sure I've done the album this time, although I do often wonder myself. Yeah, I haven't played it yet, so yeah, it's one of those things. There's also another competition which Martin's running on his group, and he's desperately trying to get people involved, and there are 10 prizes up for grabs over there, so do try that one too, and be brave. So whether you're entering his competition or my competition, don't ever think that you shouldn't enter, even if you don't think it's any good, because we're our own harshest critics. Sometimes just entering it can give you a bit of a boost, so we like to try and encourage you on in your crafting journey. So it's not going to necessarily be about the best presentation. It could be about the most innovative. So hence when we did the Christmas card competition, we were looking at different categories because we want to try and pick out the best thing. What's Martin's group? I knew you were going to say that. It's the Brother ScanNCut users, but there's 2 that are really closely named. So you're looking for the one that has Martin as a admin. And please don't ask me to pronounce his surname because I wouldn't even dare. He wants it on a mug. Okay, with mugs you're usually better using some HTV. Just because it tends to stay on there better with washing. But yes, I will go through different vinyls as I have a few samples here that I can kind of go through with you. While we're on the subject of vinyl, is vinyl something that you would like me to stock in the same way that we stock the foils? So please let me know. And a reminder for those that are new, we do our own foil for the foil quill, or you can use it with a glue pen. The only thing that we don't recommend using it with is using it with laser toner and the laminator method. It won't work. You'll just get a lovely sheet of gold foil. Tracy also does die sub, so if you want to see a video on that, let Tracy know. So each of our DT members, of which we have 3. So we have Tracy, who specialises in things like the Silhouette Business Studio. You've got die sub for Tracy, and also she'll also help you out with your ScanNCut if I'm not available. And she's also available at the hours that I'm not available. So there you go. Yeah, sorry Sally. And then we have Deb, who is really good on the ScanNCut and papercraft side of things. And announcing, we have Louise too, who you'll have noticed is awfully vocal on our videos. But she's actually a Cricut user rather than a ScanNCut. So if you have a Cricut question, you can put it to Louise. Be gentle with her though, because it's the first DT that she's been on, so I've kind of thrown her in at the deep end. So we're doing lots of projects with the DT at the moment, so you'll start to see those coming through shortly. The first of which was our members project, so I know that the guys are going to start sharing what they did with that up on their social media and also in the group. Oh, sorry Tracy. Tracy's into Cricut too. Yeah, I saw it hiding in the background the other day. So Louise was desperate to announce that she was on the DT at the weekend. It's like, I haven't put together the official announcement yet, but hey ho, go for it. So I will be updating the blog with Louise's bio so you can find out more about Louise and what she does. And Tracy and Deb already have a bio up on there too if you want to go and have a look. Yeah, Tracy just straddles all three. So if you want to ask her a silhouette question, you can do too. And then we're also adding new things in all the time. So one of the forthcoming bits of news is that we're going to be doing some laser cutting too. So that's going to be some new blog pieces that you'll find coming, and also some new things for the shop. Okay, so I think with that, I've covered everything. So I've done competition, done DT, done shop. Oh, I nearly forgot. So we also have a new little section on Creative Fabrica too. So that's called CF Fans. It's really brand new to them as much as it is to me. So it's a bit like Buy Me a Coffee, but it's going to have probably slightly different content, just because of the way things work on Buy Me a Coffee. So I will try my best to kind of have them running in sync wherever possible, so that you don't end up paying for two things. So it's $5 a month basically over there. I tried to set it in pounds, it wouldn't let me, so it's $5. You're welcome, Linda. So I think with that I will call it a day. If you have any questions about anything, as usual, I will be floating around. I'm also hoping to spend some time in the group this afternoon with the Design with Vectors group, so that I can add a bit more in there so that you can start moving on to the next section, because I know a number of you have been working really hard at it and you've done really well. So don't ever be afraid to join in and post what you're doing, whether that's on Design with Vectors or the book readers group or here on the main group. So for those of you that have applied to get into the book readers group and you're wondering why you haven't got in yet, that's because you need the code out of the book to get in. It's one of the questions that it will ask you. So if you don't have the code, I can't let you in, because I can't prove whether you've got the book or not, because Amazon don't tell me. So take care for now, and bye.